Good morning. This is a special meeting of the Budget Committee, and the purpose of this special meeting is to discuss a requested $50,000 requested additional appropriation from the Office of the First Selectman, and it's for a RFP consultant related to their RFP on the Havemeyer building. So today we're welcoming Mark Johnson, who is representing the committee, as well as Kate Bush, who is the town administrator and the First Selectman's office. So we welcome you both. I believe that Andy Deuce, who is the chair of the committee, it happens to be out of town tonight. So Mark is going to present the request for SEA.
Okay, well, thank you, Paul, for allowing me to come. I'd like to first tell you who's on the committee for this redevelopment. It's a very good, hardworking committee. We have one current member of the BET, David Westbrook, as well as three former BET members, Andy Deuce, who's our chair, Bill Finger, and myself. We have two current Board of Ed members, Karen Hirsch and Sophie Coven, and one past Board of Ed, Joe Kelly. In addition, Dev Hawley, who's got an extensive background in commercial real estate development, David Kubik, who is a partner in an architectural firm in New York City, lives in Riverside, and Carol Acunto, who's the last person on the committee. A few fun facts on the Havemeyer building. It was built in the 1890s on 2.7 acres. I believe it served as a high school at one point.
That's correct.
Yeah. But for, I don't know, the last 50 years, the offices of the Board of Ed, there's 53,787 square feet in the building, including the basement and the attic. It's in the Central Greenwich Business Zone, which at today's zoning standards, FAR that would be allowed for that property would be up to 105,000 square feet. The recent town assessment is for $32.4 million for the land and $12.5 for the building. Given the 30% discount, the fair market value is $46.3 million and $17.9 million for a total of $64 million for the property. Our charge of our committee is to evaluate the town's RFP, number 7871, for the redevelopment of the Havemeyer building and site, and to make recommendations to the First Selectman. Today we've worked with the purchasing department to write the RFP. They then issued that through various channels of communication to all potential developers nationwide. Our committee is working under the confidentiality rules of the purchasing department, and therefore we cannot disclose the number of responses or how many developers we have brought back for interviews and questions. What I'd like to do is read from parts of the first paragraph of the RFP, just to give you an idea of kind of that would solve the parameters for this building. The town is looking for a developer who will provide a high-quality vision and commercial proposal for the redevelopment and long-term use of the property. The town encourages respondents to submit creative proposals that generate strong economic activities and meaningful community uses that together will benefit the town of Greenwich and the residents of Greenwich. These proposals should capture the historic significance of the building and its architecture, consider new additions or enhancements that are compatible with the existing building and immediate site, and conform to existing surrounding area and neighborhoods. In addition to providing sufficient on-site parking for the proposed project, providing additional public parking would be beneficial to the town. Respondents can propose multiple options for the development if they fit the criteria as outlined in the RFP. The town's preference is for a long-term lease. I can say that we've been pleased with the quality and the creativity of a number of the respondents. However, all have been presented with different scenarios of compensation to the town. Some have long-term leases with annual payments, others cash up front. And it's also hard to compare, hard to compare apples to apples. And we also need to better understand the economic viability of some of the proposals. The last thing we want is somebody to get awarded the contract, build something, and 5 years later it doesn't work. They go out of business, so we want to be careful with that. We also need to consider temporary and permanent options for the location of the Board of Ed offices. So in other words, we know the town is going to have to find and pay for a lease of the Board of Ed, whether it's in an older building, newer building, whatever it might be. At this point, neither the committee nor employees of the town have knowledge of the true value of the land, the building, or potential uses to make informed recommendations. We need to hire an outside consultant with detailed knowledge and experience in property evaluations, leases, buyouts, future property tax benefits, and the types of uses most appropriate. So one example, it'd be good to know the highest and best usage of the property, so that we then can back out the benefits to the town. So in other words, it's one thing for a developer to come in and say, here's, we're going to give you the best price possible for this type of structure. But then we're going to look at it and say, well, okay, is this generating strong economic activities for the town? Is this providing meaningful community uses? Is this preservation of the historic site and building? And is this going to provide additional public parking? So it's one thing to get the highest and best usage, but we know we're probably not going to be there to get what we want for this RFP. Let me give you a rough idea of the timeline for us. Again, we've been talking to a number of different developers. We know we can't take too long, because developers, being developers, are not going to hang out all day waiting for, or all year for the town to get their act together. We have already interviewed 3 consultants. Interviews, we can ask for proposals, but we met to talk to them to get an idea where they are. Assuming we get funding for this, we get back and get proposals from the consultant, and hopefully within 4 weeks get feedback from the one we choose to help us make a better informed decision. Once we get kind of parameters from the consultant, we go back to the top 2 or 3 proposals and start talking in more detail and actually kind of start negotiating a little bit more. And this will have an idea of what we want to look for. That process probably go through late May. Then the purchasing department and the committee would really get into the final negotiations with the selected proposal. Ultimately, we give our recommendation back to the first selectman. Then he decides if he agrees with us, we're ready to go. Realistically, we're probably 5-6 months away from trying to go after MI status, trying to go to public hearings, and we have to get the legal team in the town or outside lawyers to help us with the contract, type of leases that might have to be written. So there's a fair amount of work to it, but so far the committee has done a great job, very hardworking, and we certainly have people knowledgeable, either from working on the BET or the Board of Ed. So we think we're in a good track for getting this thing accomplished. On Wednesday of last week, our committee voted 7-0-0 to come before the BET and the RTM to request the appropriation of up to $50,000 in the current fiscal year. The purpose is to fund the engagement of a consultant to assist in the due diligence and financial analysis of several of these proposals for the redevelopment of the Havenmeyer building, its site, and new BOE central offices. So I'm happy to answer some questions as far as I can. But that's provided some information. Questions?
So, any questions? Dave, you're on the committee, but do you have anything to offer or to add or to?
No, I would only, well, I would certainly add that I'm one of the 7 votes that's affirmative. I think I think Mark described it very, very well. I have nothing particularly to add to what he said. I think except to accentuate a couple of points. That is that the committee represents different aspects of the community, all those who are particularly affected by the by what's being considered. I think the committee is very thoughtful in how it's going about the process. I do believe that getting some consulting help at this point will enable the committee to come to the best decision possible. So I fully support. I'm one of the 7 votes. We spent many hours and many meetings going over this, and I think it's well thought out and worthy of our support.
Leslie?
I have a couple questions.
Sure.
I'm not as involved in the project, so
Yeah.
background. When was the RFP originally issued? How long has this committee been
Last fall.
involved?
Yeah.
And so just the consultant, and the consultant will have access to the submissions, is that correct?
Yes, I mean, in general, we want them to just evaluate the land and the property, the building itself, and give us an idea of what a long-term lease is worth, what's the value of the property is. We would then, without naming names, we would have them look at a couple of proposals, a couple of ones we think are good, kind of give us their idea of how much more we can negotiate.
So the focus is really on the kind of the financial aspects of what you see,
Yeah.
more than I'll stop there. And then so it's clear in your discussions with some of the consultants already that the scope is defined, and both the committee and the consultant would have agreement on really what's expected from their work.
Yeah. And
And
some of these consultants, I mean, they do have a background in condominium buildings, office buildings, hospitality type locations, which is good because the proposals are very different. Some are similar, some are different. But we would leverage their knowledge of these different areas to give us an idea of what it's worth.
And are they this doesn't affect my vote, but are they just consultants in this industry, or are they also part of development companies? Or?
It's a combination of large national real estate consultants. I don't know if they can mention a name or not, probably not right now.
Probably not.
But you recognize, a couple of names, a couple of them are smaller, focused just on, this type of thing. But that's where we have to be pretty careful. We want to make sure we hire the right consultant to cover all the bases for us.
And focusing on the public school administration building, is there a preference or a desire in your committee looking at a lease versus an owned building for them going forward, or has it not been specified?
We've talked about all the different options. Yeah, so I mean, we've been trying to cover all bases.
Yeah.
And it kind of depends on what some of the recommendations, some of the proposals are. But I think there's been some great creativity. Some of the ideas have come out of like, wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, and if I could add to that, the Board of Ed will have to ultimately vote on this. And of course, as Mark mentioned, we have the chair of the Board of Ed is on the committee as well as another member of the Board of Ed. So whatever the output of this committee will be scrutinized very carefully by the 2 members of the committee that are already representing the Board of Ed. And then ultimately, they will have to pass the Board of Ed. This is me speaking, maybe Mark would agree or not, I think he will, and that is that it would be pointless to approve something that would not be acceptable to the Board of Ed. At the end of the day, that would not solve the problem. I don't know if that...
Yeah, I'd agree. And of the 7-0 vote, I mean, last week was kind of vacation time, a few people weren't there. But I think it included the 2 current Board of Ed people voting yes.
That's good, because I know that there's always some concern with moving out of own space to rental space, really, because there's an uncertain financial impact, and going forward, so.
Well, and we certainly would need to get the commitment from the first selectman that whatever the option is for the Board of Ed, the town is paying for the lease. Or the,
It's only as good as the same people involved are still involved, right? Things change
Understand.
over time.
actually,
But I think those are my questions. Karen?
Yeah, I think this is the wise thing to do. I think it potentially adds to the credibility of the work of the committee, and potentially increases the confidence of the people that will be, making the ultimate decisions about this. And it's very disciplined, so I'm very much in favor of it.
So, Mark, is that okay?
That's all.
So, Mark, when I went to the website just to see what was there, the first selectman's office and then the committees, it showed committee members of Amy Courage, Christina Downey, Bill Drake, Andy Deuce, Joe Kelly, and Miriam Cruiser. So 2 of those members still remain, obviously Andy and Joe. Or, I'm not sure about
that
the
might
third.
have been the original, the first committee that looked at what to do for this whole thing. We're a separate committee.
I don't remember seeing the other committee on the website, but maybe it's on a
I
separate
don't
section.
think
No, there were 2 committees. You might have looked at, he said there was the Havemeyer RFP Review Committee, which is what we're talking about.
Oh, so and when was that committee formed, Mark?
the end of last summer. So either the town website.
I think the thing is that our list is not alphabetical.
I'm sorry?
The list of committees is not alphabetical, so you might have hit Havemeyer and not realize that it was going to be further down.
Oh, so that there are 2 committees, 2 Havemeyer committees.
Yes.
First
Okay.
one is no longer,
That
Yeah, hang on.
that wasn't clear to me as I,
There was the Havemeyer, actually, that shouldn't be gone. Havemeyer Building RFP Committee is the first one that I see.
okay, well, anyway, I went into the website and that's what it was. So can you help me a little bit in terms of what you see as, I would have expected this to be more formulated out in terms of, something at least we could look at and review. So when I, pulled the sheet from the assessor's office, it says that it's 2.7 acres, and then obviously they multiply that by 43,560 square feet and have 117,612 feet. So when I went in and looked at, CBD, Central Greenwich Business District, FAR, it was 0.3. So I came up with a number of 35,283.6, which would be probably backed into, which is how they probably allocated 2.7 acres of this larger parcel to this parcel. Can you then explain, now I know that there's also historic overlay. Is that what you're talking about here? Adding a historic overlay, which then allows the additional building? Or how did you get to your FAR for this much expanded project?
Very simple, just taking the total 2.7 acres times the 43,560, whatever it is. And then it's a 0.09 is the factor that you multiply against, and that's
And why 0.09,
what the zoning law says.
not CBD?
I
Where
don't know,
did you get
I
that?
looked at it, somebody had given it to us, Andy Deuce had given me this number, one of his earlier introductory pieces of this whole project.
I just went into the commercial zoning for the
Yeah,
town, so, and again, I do know that there are, historic overlay advantages, which they're also trying to apply to, residential districts, but I didn't, and which also allow you to build the extra building.
Unclear whether whatever developer we go with, whatever proposal, how they want to interpret that. I mean, I doubt they'd go for a historic overlay. I mean, I own 2 buildings in town that are historic overlays. That may not be the best way to do it. a lot of the proposals we looked at are, renovating the current Havemeyer building.
Mhm.
One had a very creative idea for making an addition to the building in addition to renovating it. So there's a really neat idea.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair to say,
Right, hold on. I'm still asking my question. Okay,
go right ahead.
but I'll call on you again. So, okay, again, there's no real facts or basis here that, is helping us, in terms of that information. So, I did my own review. Is it?
The main thing is we just are not sure. I mean, if a proposal came in and said, we're gonna give you $10 million up front for the properties, and you let us know what we wanna do. Okay, what does that mean? I mean, how do we know that's the highest price we can get for that? It seems low to me.
It seemed very low.
Yeah, exactly. So we want to get a feeling from an outside consultant saying, well, wait a minute, any 99-year lease for this size of a building on this type of site, you should be able to get at least X amount of dollars. And that will really help us in further negotiating some of these.
So does the town have other 99-year leases? I thought that the lease with, might be shorter on the,
It might be. One of the proposals was a 99-year lease. I just can't pick that out. There's probably a number of different lengths of a lease. But again, how do we, a 49-year lease versus a 99-year lease, what should we expect in terms of payments? That's what we need a consultant to do.
So, in the past, there's been a lot of talk about this. And so I think the really good news is that this committee is looking at something to do with Havemeyer and, how it fits in with the town. But did you also consider, as a committee, before issuing the RFP, which you've read to us, look at other uses of this building that might incorporate town's needs, like moving the Havemeyer people, say, into the third floor of this building, and then using the Havemeyer building for health and human services, and maybe GEMS, because it was always talked about moving GEMS with police and fire. Were there any other discussions other than going commercial?
We didn't try to specify. I mean, this was an open RFP proposals, meaning just trying to get some ideas from how developers would look at this and for us to make,
But it does say commercial development versus, I just wanted to know if the
Yeah.
committee had been looking at these other aspects prior
we
to.
didn't look at other departments,
Their charge was to review the RFPs.
I'm sorry?
Their charge was to review the RFPs that we received.
Yeah. And frankly, tell a developer, oh, by the way, the third floor of the Havemeyer building has to now house our GEMS. That's going to restrict what they may want to get on the property, from a lease standpoint. That's just me. But we're just evaluating what was submitted to us.
But they're bays down on the ground floor facing whatever that is, south or west, south, I guess. So, there is that kind of possibility of that building, perhaps. And also, there's been a lot of controversy on that site before. There has been, proposed uses of that site and you've been very much involved, aware at least, use of the site for a parking garage, use of the site for, the bump outs. There's been a lot of sensitivity to the memorial issues. Clearly, in redevelopment, our regulations allow much closer, we'll call it development to the property lines. Was that considered in any of this in terms of keeping the green space and maximizing green space? Because I know that's also been a sensitive subject that,
Again, this has been primarily reviewing the proposals submitted to us. I think that's down the road when we start really negotiating with whoever it is. We're not at that point yet.
so just another, I'm sorry, oh, okay.
Just if I could, the other committee that you referenced before, the names you referenced, that was the advisory committee. And they came out with a recommendation in November of '23. Their recommendations were possible relocation to school central district, and there's a whole list of bullet points below that. A new lease, repurposing of the Havemeyer building, and then to include the current committee. So Their conclusions are what led to the RFP, which is what led to this committee's actions.
Okay, thank you, Kate. Now, another thing that you mentioned, and I am a little bit, I don't know what the process is, but you mentioned that the secrecy, and yet there is in the RFP a evaluation process, which I'm very familiar with. I've sat on these RFP projects before, and so it's laid out. But then the tabulation is actually on the website, posted on the website. So I don't know whether these are who you're dealing with, but there are 2, 4, 6 names posted. A-List Design LLC, Eagle Peeble Legacy, Havemeyer LLC, Ferrari Associates, HB Nicken Group, LCB Senior Living LLC, and RT Havemeyer Partners LLC. Are those the entities that you're looking at?
Yes.
And so I think that's my questions for that. Now, David, you had something to say?
No, decided.
Okay. I'm gonna ask one question, a financial question actually on the budget, is the determination of the 50,000. Do you know about how much you need, or is that, how did you get to that number?
Well, part of the interview process, David was involved. I had to get a town that the 3 consultants we talked to, correct me if I'm wrong, David, said they thought it'd be probably 30 to 40,000. But until we know, until we actually have to get the proposals and what they're proposing for that amount of money, that's why we're asking for up to 50.
So we're going to be meeting later today. Do we want to take a vote on this now, or should we just wait until the full meeting to take one?
You should vote on all this committee, so let's take a vote.
I'll move the item forward so we can vote.
And I'll second.
So moved by Mary Fisher, seconded by Leslie Moriarty, to approve
SEA.
SEA for $50,000 for consulting money for reviewing the RFP applicants. Is that correct? Is that?
Yep.
Well, it's not, that's not.
Moving forward, SEA.
characterization, But SEA.
SEA, okay. Those in favor?
Aye.
Great. And I will abstain at this point in time. So I would just like to say those against, those abstaining. So I will abstain. I
Is
felt
there
should be
a reason you're
additional information.
abstaining?
Yes, I felt there should be additional information provided. I
So,
don't think I should have.
Could
So
you,
anyway,
could you, no, now I will speak. So
we'll
could,
be finished.
no, you may have finished, but I haven't finished. Could you please be courteous enough to explain what additional information you're looking for so that
Well, as an example,
Mark can go back and so
I
you
raised,
can abstain, but please tell Mark what the.
well, I raised additional issues, and I think Mark knows he's a real estate developer too, and I think we do need more details around how the numbers were obtained, the FAR and the other issues raised. I mean, they're just,
I mean,
and also the structure. I did ask our controller to also, how would we look at this from a capital lease on our balance sheet, because I think that's critical to all the issues that you possibly raised, David, about.
no, I don't raise issues
Oh, you
with
do?
capital leases. No, I don't.
Well, yes, you do, because capital leases are computed
So-
together with debt in terms of our structure.
I think your abstention
so-
is not constructive, because what is Pete gonna do about capital leases? I have no idea what the heck you're talking about, and I don't know what Mark's supposed to do.
I want to say something.
I'm finished.
All respect, Leslie, I think you're getting ahead of this. This is simply consulting money to help the committee. They haven't proposed anything yet about a capital lease, the structure. They want a consultant to help them formulate the structure. So I just think that you're getting way ahead of the game.
Thank you, Greg. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Moved by Leslie. Seconded by Terry Fisher. And